Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to use an assembly that you've already created as a component in another assembly. When we do that, we call that assembly a subassembly. As you can see in this hierarchy that I have displayed, we created earlier in another video the door assembly that was made up of a hatch, 2 hinges, and 8 screws. We're now going to use that assembly as a component in this larger hatch frame assembly. That means we have one of these, 2 more hinges, and 2 pins as well. Okay, so let's go about creating that. So we'll open SolidWorks, we'll go to File, New, select Assembly, select OK. The Begin Assembly box appears on the left side of the screen. We're going to select Browse because we want that frame to be the base part of our assembly, and we want its origin to be fixed with the origin of the assembly. So we just click the check mark. That rotates the image and aligns the origins, and it also freezes that part or fixes it so it has 0 degrees of freedom. Now we can select Insert Components. First component we'll insert will be that door, which is now a sub-assembly component in this design. We'll go back to Insert Components. We'll hit the Browse button. We'll select the hinge. We'll place 1 hinge here. We'll do that again. Place our second hinge over here. And now we'll do one more where we'll select the pin. We'll say Open. This time we'll select the thumbtack and we'll add 2 pins. So now we're done inserting our components. Next thing we want to do is use the Move with Triad to orient the parts so they will be able to be mated a little more easily. So that's close for that one. Let's do the same on this. Right click, Move with Triad, spin it around a little bit. That looks good. Spin it that way. Perfect. Alright. Now what I'm going to do is zoom in a little. I'm going to click Mates to actually begin my mating process with these components. So I'll select this back or front face. I'm going to right click on the hinge and do Select Other and select the face that I couldn't see, but it was underneath the one that was there. That's what Select Other allows me to do. So that has this hinge mated coincident relation with the front of this frame. I'll do the same thing here. I'll select that back side of this by doing Select Other. Then I'll select that, and we can see that we have that. If we go to the top view, you can see that no matter how I move the part, it stays parallel to that frame and coincident with that surface. Oops. Let's try that again with this one. So that's perfect. So now we'll go back to our isometric view. I'm sorry, trimetric view. And let's locate this. So we need to, one thing we need to do is make it 5.5 from this side, from this edge to there, 5.5 inches. So we'll clear this. We'll zoom way in here. We'll, in this case, let's just rotate this part a little bit. It's easier. We'll select that distance mate. Select that face. Select that face. We'll set the amount to 5.5 because we are in inches. Oh, we're not. We need to set our thing to be inches. So let me do that over here. before we go too far on this. Say OK. And now this part still moves up and down, but not right or left. So I believe we need to be 2 inches from here to here. So let's do that. So we'll select this top face, zoom in and select the top face of that. Go down to this, set it to 2. And we now have the hinge fixed in space. It's like it's attached to this part. So now I can do a similar thing with this one, but I'm just going to leave it here for a minute. And I'm going to worry now about moving our sub-assembly. So I'm going to rotate back to our trimetric view. Now you might think, let's get out of mates. Let's say we're done with mates. I'm going to click the green check mark up there. You'd think you could right-click on that sub-assembly, that hatch assembly, and say move with triad, but when I do that, nothing pops up, and that's because the triad is fixed in position. So I have 2 options. I could highlight the door sub-assembly and tell it I want to edit that door sub-assembly, and go down now and right-click on that hatch and say make it float, which now allows me to move it and rotate it. So if I uncheck the box edit component, now when I do move with triad, I have that ability to spin this around because that's all I really wanted to do. Okay. And I could go back and fix that component again by clicking on the door and saying edit component. I mean, I have to save all those changes, save and rebuild document. Do that temporarily, save all. Go back to my hatch, fix it. Okay. And now it's back to where it was. Uncheck that. I can still drag it around, but what I need to do now is properly mate it with this hinge. Okay. So let's do that. So I'm going to rotate like this, zoom in a little bit. Now, if I go to the front view, I can make my life a little bit easier when I start thinking about mating by saying, all right, this needs to be positioned about like this. So that means this edge of this hinge ought to be coincident with this edge. Additionally, this rounded surface and this rounded surface need to be concentric. So those are 2 mates that I want to make sure I add to this assembly. So I'm going to click mate again, and I can click that face, and I can click this face, and I can say make those concentric. And that's what it just did. Now what happens is this moves this way, but not up and down anymore. So now I can go and do that other relation, that other mate that I said I wanted to do, which was to make this face and that face coincident. And then I say OK. And lo and behold, if I now look at my part again from the front side, we can see that we have this frame pretty close to where we need it to be. Alright, we just need now to position this hinge with the other one, so something like that. So I got 2 choices for that. I could mate the hinge, that's this one, to this hinge, or I could just position this hinge that distance of 2 and 5.5. But I think I'll do that concentric mate again that I had. That's easy. No typing of numbers. And then I just need to also figure out what's the best location for this, and it's right here. So then I'm back to what I was doing before. Coincident mate between this face and this face. Now I'm good with that hinge. And we can see my door swinging through. Okay, so now the last thing I just need to do is get the pins together. Insert the pins into this. So a fast way to do that is again another concentric mate. I can click those two faces and say make those concentric. Good. And then I can do a coincident mate of this surface, this hat face, with the corresponding inside face of that pin. And say that's okay. And then I have one more pin to do the same thing. Concentric. And let's align this face with this face. And what I've just done is I've made my assembly, going back to that picture, I've now constructed this assembly. At this point, let me show you collision detection. It's kind of fun.